Hey, what's going on, boomers and zoomers? Welcome back to another Jump Force video and my first official guide for the game. I wouldn't consider the character overviews guides because of how basic they are, and I was conscious in my decision to call them overviews and not guides. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about how to lab a character in Jump Force. Jump Force is a very simple game when it comes to its mechanics. You can be a top ranked player by only knowing the basics and simply refining them. However, Jump Force has a plethora of secondary mechanics which can be underutilized by the general player base. This guide will be about the process of learning a character and applying those secondary mechanics into your game plan. It's really interesting how in depth you can get with these characters once you learn these mechanics. I'm planning to create this labbing guide as well as a guide on all of the mechanics in the game, from your basic rush strings to vanishes and how this all plays into offense and defense. Once I've created both of those guides, then I'll look at creating unique character guides that aim to walk you through all combos on specific characters as well as their best tools for pressure, restands, mix-up, etc. So stick around for that. Anyway, let's get into this guide. This guide is going to be a broad look at how I think you should lab a character in Jump Force. Take note that this isn't meant to be for any specific character, and different strategies will help different players. This is just what I'd suggest to a player. Naturally, the first step is choosing a character you want to learn. I'm going to keep this section short because ultimately it comes down to who you want to play. Nobody knows your ideal character better than yourself. If you're looking for a specific gameplay style, take a look on screen and pause the video to see who you might like. Any character can play offensively or defensively, so never feel pressured to stick to a single gameplay style with your character. I'd say that the way that I've classified them is a very broad look at them for a new player. The first tip that I have for whenever you want to get into the lab is to set your opponent to be the avatar. This is simply because the avatar character doesn't have any particular strengths or weaknesses when it comes to their resistances. I don't know how important resistances really are, but it's best to keep it as controlled as possible so that you can be consistent with things like combo damage. The first thing I do when I'm labbing a character is run around the arena and get a feel for the character. Jump around, just get a hang of how they feel, get into the flow of it. I quickly move into testing out all of the character's moves right there and then. Just go through everything the character has in their moveset: rush string, heavy string, up and down tilts. Also take a look at your air attacks, smash attacks and grab. Once you familiarise yourself with all of these normal attacks, take a look at your supers. You can read up on your supers in the ability list, which is helpful if you have no idea what they do, but the descriptions are extremely bad here, and main descriptions completely miss out key information, so you can read them, but don't rely on them for anything meaningful whatsoever. Get a good understanding of how each of your abilities function before worrying about combos. Next, move on to some basic combos. Almost any character has a universal combo, that being 4 lights, 2 heavies and an ability. Many characters can go much more in depth with that formula, which is the purpose of this video, but that basic guideline should be able to work on every character. Obviously, some characters can do more than 4 lights, and many characters can do 3 heavies into an ability. So just take some time to get an understanding of how your character can combo on a basic level. After the very basic combos, look at other ways to connect your abilities out of different normal attacks. Also look to see if any can connect after a grab, especially your awakened ability. Not only try different numbers of light attacks and heavy attacks, but also your up and down tilt strings. Up and down tilt strings can be troublesome for combos for many characters, but it's important to know where you can use these in combos in exchange for your other normal attacks. That's all I have for the easy labbing, and that's where I'd consider the majority of players to be at when it comes to learning a character. Next up, the intermediate level. This is where I'd consider myself to be at currently. This difficulty essentially takes everything you learn from the easy difficulty and steps it up. It doesn't quite take things to a whole new level, but focuses on efficiency and refinement on what you've previously learned. So you should now have a good understanding of how your character works on a basic level, as well as knowing what your moves are and how to combo fairly well. The intermediate difficulty will look at introducing awakenings into your combos, as well as how to be more efficient by adding assists, ability to ability combos, and less overall hits. When it comes to creating combos in Jump Force, you want to be as efficient as possible to maximise your damage output, whilst having as little opportunity as possible for your opponent to escape. Because of Jump Force's damage scaling and escape mechanics, it can be difficult to take some stuff from the lab straight to a match. So the first tip I have for intermediate difficulty labbing is incorporating awakening into your gameplay. How you want to utilise this depends on your character and playstyle. I won't go too in depth on how awakening works here, because I think that's something I could use for a completely different guide if I want to pursue that. One tip I will give is that awakening out of attacks depletes the gauge much faster than awakening regularly. With that being said, at this stage of labbing, I like to learn the best ways to combo into an offensive awakening and then easily confirm into my ultimate ability. I usually do this by learning how I can combo from my light attacks into a fully charged heavy. Most characters should already have a way of doing this. It's a great way to confirm into whatever you want within a combo. It keeps your options open. Also, look at how your awakening works. It's extremely rare, but a select few number of characters have their movesets altered even slightly when they've awakened. Typically, when I'm giving tips for labbing a character, I would generally say to lab just the character you're trying to learn and completely ignore assists when it comes to combos, because I think the better players are the ones who are able to create efficient and effective combos with a character without having to use assists. As such, when it comes to using assists, I would generally say to learn not only how to combo with assists later down the line once you've done a great understanding of how to use a character on a basic level by themselves, but also learning which assists can work with your character outside of combos. Maybe some assists can help you with pressuring the opponent, some may help you play defensive for certain gameplay strategies. It just all depends on the character you're playing in that respect, so that just comes with time and practice when it comes to learning which assists are best to use for you. The next thing I want to say is moving from the very basic combos, the universal combos almost, is to learn how to combo from one ability to the next so that your opponent can't escape the combo. One thing that many characters can do is go from either a grab or certain abilities straight into an awaken ability, or even combo into other abilities, which is useful because the enemy cannot use their escape mechanics on abilities, they can only do it on regular attacks. As such, finding opportunities when you can go from one ability straight into the next will be a great way of keeping your combos high damage, whilst also leaving it so that the opponent cannot escape, making them very reliable. Of course, this is going to differ from character to character, and also using assists can really help you to learn how to use these types of combos. So in that respect, I would say learn how to use assists, but typically I would recommend not learning assists until later on, once you've really gotten a grasp of your character on a basic level. So that's what I suggest there. Another tip I have is learning how to mix up with your character. This is a very character specific tip, so I don't have much advice here. Learning how to mix up your character takes skills you'll learn from all difficulty levels, because using Jump Force's fighting mechanics to the fullest is where the mix up becomes potent. Consider your game plan and gameplay approach and weave some simple mix ups into it. A solid way of doing this is learning when you can change the timings of your attacks to throw the opponent off their punish game, or substituting certain attacks in when you otherwise wouldn't. I like to condition the opponent with a typical heavy string and then randomly add a tilt light string to catch them and then confirm into a super. Again, this is character specific. Certain characters have different ways of mixing up and pressuring the opponent. Pressuring is something we'll look at the advanced level as well. Aside from those, however, at the intermediate level you'll just be making a natural improvement when it comes to your overall gameplay and combos. I don't expect much complexity in combos at the intermediate level, but I do expect you to have a great understanding of your entire moveset, how all of your strings work, and the best opportunities to use what. Again, this is just natural developed knowledge from the easy difficulty. Finally, we're at the advanced difficulty for labbing a character. This is where I'm hoping to get to personally, as I don't really invest enough time to get to this level. At this stage, you'll be looking at improving on what you've previously learned, whilst also taking some steps up to maximize your execution and efficiency. Also, we'll be introducing a top tier mechanic here for labbing characters. Don't worry about this unless you really want to strive for that level of gameplay. High speed movement is a mechanic used by pressing the jump button during a light or heavy attack, and is commonly referred to as an instant transmission. Once mastered, this is one of the strongest tools in the game, and not only opens up new options for combos, but massively assists in block string pressure and mix up. It also has movement benefits, allowing you to move in and out of the opponent's range, to continue the pressure or move to defense. Jump Force's training mode isn't the greatest, so practicing this isn't realistic, but it's better than nothing. Set the AI to block, and then practice how you can go from an attack to a high speed movement with as little delay as possible. This is helpful for learning how to pressure the opponent whilst they block, as well as knowing when you can hit confirm into a combo or a super attack. This same principle can easily be applied to mix up. Using the high speed movement every now and again to throw your opponent off can be extremely helpful. It will also put the opponent in this mindset where they won't know what to expect. Your gameplay will appear random and chaotic, but it's actually calculated and strategic. Grab mix-up is also a very powerful tactic to master. In many fighting games, grabs are a great way to deal a large amount of damage by bypassing the opponent's block, making them play less defensively moving forward. As well as learning the best ways to use high-speed movement to pressure, the same principle can apply to grabs. Learn the best ways that your character can go from attack strings straight into a grab as a way of catching your opponent out once again. Applying all of these pressure tactics into your gameplay will keep the opponent guessing and put them up against the wall. It will also naturally play into your mix-up, which is a skill you should be naturally developing alongside yourself. Anyway guys, that's all I have for you today. It was quite interesting working on my first Jump Force guide, and I will likely create more guides in the future for a number of this game's mechanics. I don't think that this guide was perfect, however. If there's anything I missed out, feel free to tell me, and if you have any ideas for other guides, again feel free to tell me. I have no concrete plans for future guides, just a few ideas such as combo guides, a full breakdown of Jump Force's fighting mechanics, and the resources such as Awakening, Mobility Gauge, etc. Also, I apologise if the advanced difficulty of adding characters was very brief. It's just because I'm not really at that level myself, so it's kind of a bit more difficult for me to talk about that in any detail. So again, I apologise if that section was a little bit lackluster. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.